Daniel Brooks had never been rich. He worked 12 hours a day repairing old cars just to keep food on the table for his 10-year-old daughter, Emma. Every dollar mattered. Some weeks, even buying groceries became a difficult decision. One rainy evening, after closing his small repair shop, Daniel noticed something lying beside the highway. It was a black leather duffel bag. At first, he thought it was empty. But when he picked it up, it was surprisingly heavy. Emma looked at him. "Dad, should we open it?" Daniel shook his head. "First, let's see if we can find the owner." Back at the garage, Daniel checked the outside of the bag. There was no name. No phone number. Only a silver luggage tag engraved with 2 initials. RH. Emma searched online. "Dad, I think I found something." The initials belonged to billionaire Richard Harrison. Daniel looked surprised. "The CEO of Harrison Global?" Emma nodded. "He reported a missing bag just 2 hours ago." Daniel smiled. "Then tomorrow morning, we'll return it." Emma looked confused. "What if there's money inside?" Daniel placed the bag on his workbench. "If it isn't ours, we don't need to know." The next morning, Daniel and Emma drove nearly 3 hours to Harrison Global headquarters. Security guards stopped them at the entrance. One guard looked at Daniel's old pickup truck and laughed. "You have an appointment." Daniel held up the bag. "I believe this belongs to Mr. Harrison." The guards exchanged skeptical looks. One finally said, "Wait here." 20 minutes later, a convoy of black luxury SUVs pulled into the entrance. A tall man in a dark suit stepped out. It was billionaire Richard Harrison himself. He looked at the worn leather bag and immediately recognized it. "You actually brought it back." Daniel smiled. "It belongs to you." Richard slowly unzipped the bag. He expected to see what he had lost. Instead, his face suddenly turned pale. "What? This wasn't inside yesterday." Daniel and Emma looked at each other in confusion. Hidden beneath the documents was a small sealed envelope with only 3 handwritten words. "Don't trust anyone." Richard's hands began to tremble. Someone had secretly placed the envelope inside the bag after it had gone missing. And whatever was inside was enough to completely change the expression on one of the richest men in the world. Richard Harrison stared at the sealed envelope for several long seconds. His hands were shaking. Emma whispered, "Dad, is everything okay?" Richard slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a single memory card. And a handwritten note. "The people closest to you are stealing everything. Watch the video before tomorrow's board meeting." Richard's face turned completely pale. He looked at Daniel. "May I borrow your laptop?" Daniel nodded. "Of course." They walked into the repair shop office. Richard inserted the memory card. A security camera recording appeared on the screen. The footage showed Richard's private office late at night. 3 senior executives quietly entered the room. One unlocked Richard's safe. Another removed confidential contracts worth billions of dollars. The third person carefully placed the leather bag back on the desk. Then he said, "Once Harrison takes this bag tomorrow, everyone will believe he lost the contracts. We'll blame him for the missing documents." Richard couldn't believe his eyes. "They were planning to destroy my reputation." The video continued. One executive smiled. "After tomorrow's emergency board meeting, we'll vote him out as CEO." Emma covered her mouth. "They're trying to steal his company." Richard slowly closed the laptop. "If you hadn't returned this bag, I would have walked straight into their trap." Just then, Richard's phone rang. It was the chairman of the board. "Richard, don't forget tomorrow's meeting." Richard calmly replied, "I won't." And trust me, tomorrow is going to surprise everyone. After ending the call, Richard turned to Daniel. I have a favor to ask. Daniel nodded. What is it? Richard smiled. I want both of you sitting in the front row tomorrow. Because when the truth comes out, I want everyone to know who saved my company. Emma smiled excitedly. But outside the garage, a black SUV was parked across the street. Inside, one of the executives watched everything through binoculars. He picked up his phone. They have the memory card. There was a long silence. Then a cold voice replied. Don't let them reach tomorrow's meeting. The next morning, Daniel and Emma arrived at Harrison Global headquarters. The building was surrounded by reporters. Luxury cars filled the parking lot.
Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Enjoy the video.
Inside, directors, investors, and senior executives gathered for the emergency board meeting. Richard Harrison greeted Daniel with a firm handshake. I'm glad you came. You may witness one of the most important days in this company's history. Daniel smiled. We're here to support the truth. The meeting began. One executive, Michael Grant, stood confidently. Ladies and gentlemen, our CEO has lost confidential company documents. His negligence has placed billions of dollars at risk. Several board members nodded. Another executive added. We recommend removing Richard Harrison as CEO immediately. Richard remained calm. He slowly stood up. Before anyone votes, I'd like everyone to watch something. The lights dimmed. The security video from the memory card appeared on the giant screen. The room fell silent. Everyone watched the three executives enter Richard's office. They saw them unlock the safe, steal the documents, and secretly place the leather bag back. Gasps echoed throughout the boardroom. Michael's face turned white. That's fake. Richard looked directly at him. Really? He pressed another button. A second video appeared. This one showed the same executives meeting with a competitor. One of them said, once Richard is removed, the company is ours. The room exploded with outrage. Board members stood from their seats. You betrayed this company. You planned all of this. At that moment, security officers entered the boardroom. Michael Grant. You and your associates are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and theft of corporate property. The three executives tried to leave. But every exit was already blocked. Reporters outside captured the entire scene. Within minutes, the story spread across every major news channel. Richard turned toward Daniel. If you had kept that bag, I would have lost everything. Daniel smiled. I only returned what wasn't mine. Richard shook his head. No. You returned something much bigger than a bag. You returned my future. As the board applauded Daniel and Emma, reporters rushed toward them with cameras flashing. But before anyone could ask a question, Richard walked to the stage once more. I have one more announcement. Everyone turned to look at him. His next words left the entire room speechless. Richard stood at the front of the boardroom. The room was completely silent. He looked at Daniel. Everyone here has been asking how I uncovered this conspiracy. He smiled. The answer is simple. A man with nothing to gain chose honesty. Every eye turned toward Daniel. The room erupted into applause. Daniel felt uncomfortable. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I simply returned a lost bag. Richard shook his head. That's exactly why you're extraordinary. Richard picked up another folder. I have one final decision to announce. The directors watched closely. As of today, Harrison Global will launch a nationwide scholarship and training program for struggling mechanics. He paused. And I want Daniel Brooks to lead it. The audience gasped. Daniel was speechless. Me? Richard nodded. You understand something money can't buy. Integrity. Emma smiled proudly. I told you, Dad. Just then, the company's legal advisor hurried into the room. Mr. Harrison. We've recovered the missing contracts. Richard smiled. Excellent. But there's something else. The lawyer handed him another sealed envelope. It was found in Michael Grant's office. Richard opened it. Inside was a list of secret offshore bank accounts, along with the names of several powerful business leaders. The room became silent again. One board member whispered, "This is much bigger than our company." Richard looked at Agent Collins from the Financial Crimes Unit. "I believe this belongs to your team." The agent nodded. "It does. And this investigation is just getting started." Outside the headquarters, reporters surrounded Daniel. One asked, "Mr. Brooks, how does it feel to save a billionaire's company?" Daniel smiled. "I didn't save a company. I simply refused to keep something that wasn't mine." Another reporter asked, "If you had known how valuable that bag was, would you still have returned it?" Daniel looked at Emma. Then answered, "My daughter was watching. I wanted her to learn that honesty isn't something you practice only when it's easy." The crowd applauded. At that moment, Richard stepped outside holding a small gift box. "Daniel. I have something for you." Daniel opened it slowly. Inside was a single key. Richard smiled. "It's not for a car. It's for a building." Daniel looked confused. "What building?" Richard pointed across the street. A large, newly renovated workshop stood there with a sign still covered by a curtain. "That workshop belongs to you now." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Dad! Is that really ours?" Daniel could hardly believe it. But Richard wasn't finished yet. "I have one more surprise waiting inside." Daniel stood frozen, staring at the key in his hand. Emma squeezed his arm. "Dad! Open it." Richard smiled. "I think you'll like what's inside." They walked across the street toward the newly renovated workshop. A crowd of reporters and Harrison Global employees followed behind. Richard unlocked the front door. As Daniel stepped inside, he stopped in disbelief. The building was enormous. Modern vehicle lifts. Brand new diagnostic equipment. Rows of professional tools. A training classroom with dozens of workstations. Emma's eyes sparkled. "It's beautiful." Richard nodded. "It isn't just a repair shop. It's a place where honest mechanics can learn without worrying about money." Daniel slowly walked through the workshop. "I've dreamed of something like this for years." Richard smiled. "Dreams deserve a chance." Then Richard handed Daniel another folder. Inside was the official ownership certificate. The building now belonged to Daniel Brooks. There was only one condition. Daniel looked up. "What condition?" Richard replied. "Train the next generation the same way you taught your daughter. With honesty first." Daniel smiled. "I can promise that." As everyone celebrated, one of Richard's assistants rushed inside. "Sir. We've recovered the deleted files from Michael Grant's laptop." Richard looked surprised. "Were they restored?" "Yes." The assistant connected the laptop to the large screen. The recovered files revealed millions of dollars secretly transferred through fake companies. But one document shocked everyone. It was titled, Project Horizon. Richard frowned. "I've never heard of this." The assistant opened it. The document revealed plans for a revolutionary clean energy transportation system that had been hidden for years. Emma whispered, They tried to hide another invention. Richard nodded slowly. It appears so. Daniel looked at the screen. Then this isn't just about recovering stolen money. It's about making sure good ideas aren't buried. Richard turned toward Daniel. I'd like your help reviewing Project Horizon. Daniel smiled. I'll help. But only if everything stays transparent. Richard extended his hand. Agreed. The room applauded. As reporters photographed the moment, Emma noticed another sealed envelope clipped to the Project Horizon file. She picked it up. Dad. It says, open only after the investigation is complete. Daniel looked at Richard. Richard nodded. I think our story isn't over yet. The mystery surrounding Project Horizon was only beginning. The federal investigation lasted nearly 6 months. Every hidden account was uncovered. Every fraudulent contract was traced. And every executive involved in the conspiracy faced justice. The truth that began with one forgotten bag had changed an entire corporation. On the day the investigation officially ended, Richard Harrison invited Daniel and Emma to Harrison Global Headquarters once again. This time, there were no reporters chasing a scandal. Instead, hundreds of employees gathered to celebrate a new beginning. Richard walked onto the stage. 6 months ago. I almost lost everything. Not because I made the wrong business decision. But because I trusted the wrong people. He looked toward Daniel. One honest mechanic reminded all of us that integrity is the strongest foundation any company can have. The audience rose for a standing ovation. Richard then picked up the sealed envelope labeled, open only after the investigation is complete. He slowly opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter from his late business partner. Richard's voice trembled as he read it aloud. If you're reading this, the truth has finally come out. Never measure a person's value by the size of their bank account. The future of this company will depend on people with character, not titles. Richard folded the letter. He wrote this 10 years ago. I wish I had listened sooner. Richard smiled and turned to Daniel. I have one final request. Daniel nodded. What is it? I want you to serve on the Ethics Advisory Board of Harrison Global. Daniel thought for a moment. Then he smiled. I'll accept. But only if I can continue running my garage. Richard laughed. I was hoping you'd say that. 1 year later. The new training center was filled with young mechanics from across the country. Many came from families that had never imagined they could afford technical education. Every student received free tools, professional training, and one lesson that Daniel repeated every morning. Skills can build a career. Character builds a legacy. Those words became the motto of the academy. Emma, now a confident teenager, helped teach new students. One afternoon she asked, Dad, if you had known that bag would change your life, would you still have returned it? Daniel smiled as he looked around the busy workshop. I never returned it because I expected a reward. I returned it because it was the right thing to do. Emma nodded. I'll always remember that. Outside the academy stood a bronze plaque donated by Richard Harrison. It read, This place exists because one honest father chose integrity over opportunity. May every student who enters remember that honesty is the greatest investment anyone can make. Daniel looked at the plaque, then at the students laughing as they worked together. He smiled. The lost bag had never really been about money. It had been a test of character. And in choosing honesty, Daniel hadn't just returned a billionaire's belongings. He had inspired countless others to do the right thing.